hours get wasted in an airport every single day? That's a real question I was asked at Google. Here's what trips up most candidates. They get the granularity wrong in one of two directions. Some take a superficial approach and come up with a figure they can't actually back up. Others chase every variable, terminal versus terminal, weekday versus weekend, until they run out of time before a single number ever appears. A guesstimate is never graded on the number itself. It's graded on whether your thinking is visible, whether your assumptions hold up, whether you can land on a number that's plausible, not perfect. Today, I'm building the guesstimate from scratch on a Google spreadsheet so you can see exactly how the thinking works, not just the final answer. Hi, I'm Muthu. I've been a PM at Google, Flipkart, and other tech companies for over 12 years. This is PM Up Level, interview prep for senior level PM roles in India. Subscribe. One video a week, all of it from 12 years of experience interviewing and being interviewed for India PM roles. Let's name what's actually being graded here because the math is only a part of it. 4 things are being evaluated. Can you take a vague, open-ended question and structure it before you touch a single number? Can you communicate that structure clearly enough for someone else to follow in real time? Can you make assumptions that are reasonable, not just convenient? And can you land on a number that's plausible? Discuss where it could be wrong and name the edge cases you didn't account for. Notice what's missing from that list. Getting the exact right number. Nobody knows the exact right number. If you're off by 20% on a guess in the millions, that's fine. If you're off by a factor of 10, that's the actual failure. Order of magnitude is the bar, not precision. Here's what a weak answer looks like, and it fails in one of two directions. Version 1, the candidate never lays out an approach before diving in. They just start talking and chase one thread, backtrack, try another, with no stated plan for how they'll get from the question to a number. The interviewer has nothing to follow because there's no visible structure, so they can't track where the answer is headed. And it's not just the interviewer who gets lost. Without a plan, candidates lose their own thread too, and the answer falls apart before anyone even gets to judge the math. Version 2 is the opposite failure, and it's not the one candidates don't see coming. Overslicing. The candidate breaks the estimate into terminal 1 versus terminal 2, weekday versus weekend, business class versus economy, and 8 minutes in, they are still building the formula and haven't estimated a single number. Both versions fail the same evaluation for opposite reasons. One shows no structure, the other shows structure with no judgment about when to stop adding it. Here's how I'd actually answer it. Before I touch a single number, I'd lay out how I'm going to approach this and get the interviewer's buy-in. In the room, I'd say something like, before I dive in, let me walk through my approach. I'll clarify the scope, lay out a formula at a high level, break that formula into its parts, build each part up from something concrete rather than guessing it, calculate a number, sanity check the number, then call out my major assumptions that affect this number. Does that work for you? Then I'd walk it one step at a time. Step 1, clarify. 2 things need locking down before I touch a number. First, the scope. Can I assume the Indian context, specifically Bengaluru's airport terminal 1? I'd propose domestic passengers only, since the domestic is the biggest slice of traffic by volume. I'd rather scope it out upfront than fold it in later, half-built. Within that, departing passengers only, not arriving passengers waiting at immigration, baggage claim, not the friends and family who come to see people off, which is sizable in India, and not the airport staff, since their time isn't wasted, it's their job. Second, the most important one that candidates skip entirely, what actually counts as wasted. I'd define it as time spent doing nothing productive, standing in a queue, waiting at the gate, or walking through the terminal with no purpose beyond getting to the next queue. I'd name all of these choices out loud, flag that I'm deliberately leaving arriving passengers, international departures, and the send-off crowd out for now, and come back to that as a limitation once I have a number. Step 2, lay out the approach. Quick practical note before I pull this up. In a real interview, you can work a guesstimate out on a Word doc or on a spreadsheet or even on your notebook. Use whichever you're actually comfortable with, and more specifically, whichever one you're practiced in. That matters more than which tool is technically better. Word makes structuring easier, bullets and sub-bullets keep a breakdown clean. A spreadsheet makes the math easier. The formulas update live the moment you change an assumption. For this video, I'm using the Google Sheets since most of what's ahead is arithmetic. Before filling in a single number, the formula is total wasted hours per day equals total passengers departing daily times wasted time per passenger. That's the whole shape of the answer. Time wasted per passenger is its own block, and I'd break that down next. Everything from here is just filling in the two pieces of the equation on the right side. Step 3, break down the formula. I want to be explicit about what time wasted per passenger actually contains before I estimate it. Because it isn't one number, it's three separate things stacked on top of each other. The first is walking, moving through the terminal with no purpose beyond reaching the next step. The second is queue time, the actual line at entry, at security, at the gate. The third is the dwell time sitting at the gate after you've cleared everything before boarding is called. I'd estimate each one separately rather than guessing a single blended number because that's what makes the number defensible instead of a guess. Step 4, build the population. Instead of guessing a single footfall number, I'd build it in two stages. How many flights depart in a day, then how many passengers are on each one. Terminal 1 has 42 gates. Departures cluster into two banks, 5 to 9 in the morning and 5 to 9 in the evening. So 8 peak hours. Another 12 hours are off peak, 9 in the morning to 5 in the evening, plus 9 at night to 1 in the morning. From 1 to 5 in the morning, the terminal is effectively dead, so I'm not counting those 4 hours at all. At peak, each gate turns 0.75 flights an hour. That's roughly one flight an hour, but I don't really think every gate runs one flight an hour at peak, so I'm slightly marking that down. Off peak, 0.33 per hour, which roughly means one flight takes off each gate every 3 hours. Now, passengers per flight. A single aisle plane, 30 rows, 6 seats across, 180 seats is my key assumption. Occupancy at peak, 100% since peak flights fly essentially full. Off peak, 80% since that's genuinely when demand drops. Weighted across the day, that's 165.6 passengers a flight. 420 flights times 165.6 passengers is 69,552 passengers departing daily. Step 5, estimate the time wasted. Walking first, since it's the simplest and doesn't vary. 5 minutes to enter, 5 minutes to the security check, 10 to the boarding gate, 5 for boarding, 25 minutes total, same at peak or off peak. Queue time is where the real variance lives. So before I put numbers on it, I want to name what's actually driving that variance. DigiYatra adoption and luggage. Those are the two real levers. So I'd build the estimate around them instead of guessing one blended number. First, DigiYatra, India's own facial recognition entry system. I'd assume 50% adoption. Off-peak queue at the entrance is 2 minutes, with it 10 without. Security check 10 with and 20 without. Boarding 10 either way. That's 22 minutes total with DigiYatra, 40 without, off-peak. But these are physical queues, a fixed number of counters and scanners. So more people moving through at once means longer lines, not just at the luggage counter. At peak, I'd push DigiYatra line up by half to 33 minutes since it's largely automated check. The manual line I'd push up more, almost by 3x, since it depends on a person checking every document by hand, and that's the kind of step that backs up hardest under load. Second driver, luggage. About 70% of passengers are checking a bag, and the time that adds isn't constant either. It swings hard with congestion. 30 extra minutes at peak, and when the drop-off line backs up versus 5 off-peak, when it barely queues at all. Weighted by how many passengers actually move through at each time of the day, the average time with luggage is 21.3 minutes. Average time without luggage blended across DigiYatra, split and weighted the same way, is 49.2 minutes. Put them together, 70% paying that extra time on top of the 49.2 minutes leads to an overall queue time of 64.11 minutes. Notice the shape of that. I didn't split queue time by peak and off peak first. I split it by what actually drives it, DigiYatra and luggage, and then let peak and off peak show up inside both, since congestion hits every checkpoint when more people are moving through it, not just where bags get dropped. Last lever, waiting. 30 minutes of dwell time at the gate before boarding is called out. Constant across peak and off peak. If I only had to defend one of these, it would be the queue estimate, since it's carrying both real drivers, DigiYatra and luggage, that explain why the number isn't just a flat guess. Step 6, calculate the number. Add the three levers, 25 minutes walking, 64.11 minutes in the queue, and 30 waiting. That's 119.11 minutes of time wasted per passenger. Multiply that with the total passengers departing daily, 69,552. The total wasted hours a day comes up to 1,38,075.84 a day. Step 7. Sanity check the number. Before I log this in, I'd check it, and the check can't lean on a statistic I'd have to recall precisely, because I wouldn't actually know one walking into this room. There are two numbers actually driving the answer, so I'd take them in turn. First, the population, 69,552 passengers a day. I'd cross check that with the second method built entirely live from population instead of infrastructure. Bangalore's metro population is roughly 1.3 crore 13 million people. On any given day, I'd guess something like 1 in 100 of them is flying, given how much of that is business travel and connecting traffic through a major tech hub, not just city residents making a trip. That's just about 130,000 air travelers a day, both directions, domestic and international combined. Departures alone is roughly half and about 65,000. And since domestic still makes up the large majority of India's air travel, I'd assume around 80% of that is domestic. So about 52,000 domestic departures a day. My bottoms up build says 69,552, about a third higher than the top down number. Two methods that share no inputs landing within a third of each other is close enough to trust. And if I had to close that gap further, I'd know exactly which assumption I'd revisit first. I'm still assuming every peak flight sells out, and that's the one number in the build doing the most optimistic lifting. Second, the time per passenger, 119.11 minutes. For this, I'd use something I can actually vouch for instead of a stat. My own experience flying domestic out of Bengaluru, I usually budget somewhere around 90 minutes to 2 hours from walking into the terminal to being seated. And most of that is queuing and waiting, not walking, which lands close to the upper end of that range, near 2 hours, but still inside it. Step 8. Name what's excluded. The sanity check tells me the number holds up for what it covers. What it can't tell me is what the number leaves out entirely, so I'd name that myself. I scope this to domestic departing passengers only. Arriving passengers lose real time at immigration and baggage claim. International departures go through their own immigration queue. I never built an estimate for. The send-off crowds at Indian airports are genuinely large, often outnumbering the passengers themselves at the departure curve. And I've assumed every flight departs on schedule. Real delays and outright cancellations had wasted time on top of everything I've built, sometimes hours of it, and I haven't touched that at all. All four would push the true number meaningfully higher. That's outside the scope entirely. There's a second different kind of gap inside the scope this time. I used a single blended queue time, but that number almost certainly hides real variance. A solo business traveler behaves very differently from a family with 5 children. Averaging masks that, and it's a real limitation in the estimate, even though I don't think closing it would move the order of magnitude. So why did the signal actually show up in that answer? Not in the final number, 138,075.84 minutes is not a fact, it's a defensible estimate. It showed up in breaking one vague term into 3 named levers instead of guessing a blend. It showed up in building the population from gates and turnover instead of recalling a number from somewhere. And it showed up in checking my own model against something built independently of it. Population against a live top-down estimate, time against my own experience, and naming the one assumption, still doing the most optimistic lifting before the interviewer had to ask. The last one is the part almost nobody does. Most candidates treat landing on a number as the finish line. It's not. Checking it yourself before anyone asks you to is very critical. Here's the real bar on a guesstimate. Nobody in that room believes you calculated the true number of wasted hours at Bengaluru's airport. What they're actually deciding is whether they trust you to size an unfamiliar, ambiguous problem on the job with incomplete data and still land somewhere defensible. The number is just the evidence, the structure, the assumptions, and honesty about what you don't know. That's the actual answer. If you've been asked a guesstimate question and frozen or talked yourself into a number you couldn't defend, tell me the question in the comments and I'll break it down. Subscribe to PM Up Level. One video a week straight from 12 years of experience on both sides of the interview table.